It's March 23rd, 2023. This is Roqe. Hi there, welcome to episode 249 of Roqe. 249.
Wow.
I'm Jian Ghomeshi. Hello to you from Toronto, Canada. Salam Dustana Aziz Durubashuma. Welcome and hello to you from wherever you are in the world listening in. We appreciate you. Hello, Pegah.
Hello.
Happy post Nowruz to you.
Thank you.
Actually, it's weird with Nowruz because there's the Saat Tahvil, there's the moment, the spring equinox.
Yes.
We sit around the Haft-Seen. Everybody says important things to each other, and at least
right.
in my family. Very important. And then Nowruz continues for a couple of weeks.
Yeah.
I didn't know that growing up. I thought that was just
13 days, technically.
So do we so in normal years, let's forget whether it's kosher right now to talk about Nowruz or what.
Right.
In normal years, do we say Happy Nowruz for 2 weeks? Or do we say, how was your Nowruz?
Well, I think when you first see someone after Saat Tahvil, then you say, Sana no Mubarak, that kind of thing, Happy Nowruz. But then for us, we see each other almost every day. I think we've said our Happy Nowruz.
Do I need to bring someone in who's come from Iran more recently, or do you know what you're talking about?
I think I know what I'm talking about.
Okay, so the answer is, if you see someone that you haven't seen
yes.
a week after the equinox,
yes.
you still say Happy Nowruz.
That's right.
Right.
Because the first time you're seeing them.
Because in Western New Year calendar, whatever, there's that you still say Happy New Year, but then there's that moment. It's like when do you take the Christmas lights down? It's like there's a moment of should I still be saying Happy New Year? It's January 17th, right?
Yeah.
So with Nowruz though, the thing actually continues for a couple of weeks.
Yeah. So I think up until Sizdah Bedar, which is 13 days after Nowruz, you can kind of carry that on.
Right. Okay. So, I mean, most people listening are considering tuning out already. Like Jian's elemental lessons in Nowruz. I think I knew a lot about Nowruz, but it was a new thing to me because I grew up in the West to know that it's like a 2-week long.
Really? Did you not celebrate Sizdah Bedar growing up? You wouldn't take your sabza afterwards and throw it in a body of water?
Yeah. No, come on. No, my mom we'd keep the sabzeh, but I thought it was just until it dies or something. I didn't know it was
very specifically it dies
and
after
then the
13
throwing
days.
it in the water and all that. No, come
okay.
on. I didn't even jump over the fire.
Did you jump this year or
no
at all? Ever?
Yes, in recent years.
Okay.
But we didn't do that. We didn't have that. I was brought up there was nobody around. There weren't, where I was growing up in like Thornhill of the 80s and 90s, they see a bunch of Persians jumping over fire, they would like arrest us or something.
Yeah, I guess I'm thinking of
now
Thornhill
it's like
nowadays.
the community. Yeah, everybody's like, oh, Josh Abasuri. We didn't have that. We didn't have the luxury of having that. You people with your community. So anyway, how was your Nowruz?
It was good. I mean, despite what's been going on and how we've been feeling, with family at least, we tried to maintain some of the traditions and still celebrate the new year. And, like we talked about on our Nowruz special, I'm still a big believer in celebrating Nowruz and making sure that those traditions are kept alive. So it was good. I spent time with my grandfather, which was important.
Very nice.
Yeah, it was good.
Yeah, same. We sat and it wasn't as lavish or as excitable a Nowruz as other years, but it was nice to spend time with some family, and then of course the obligatory Zooming and phone calls from
afterwards
everywhere. Coming up on this show, it's a really strong show today. I'm looking forward to our guests. Have you seen a woman named Hedieh Safiyari? I shouldn't say have you seen, because I know you've seen her videos. Do you know who that is when I say that name?
I think so. I think I've seen the videos on Instagram. And
did you? So because we're about to do the show,
That's right.
You know who the lineup is. But did you know of her before we booked her a couple weeks ago? And
I don't know if I knew her specifically, but I had seen some of the videos and things like that circulated and shared.
I only ask because it's an interesting story. Like she's someone who came from Iran in her mid-teens, and was a competitive swimmer. She's an athlete, goes into healthcare and wellness, and then I guess starts making TikTok videos 2 or 3 years ago, inspired by her daughter. I'm going to ask her about that. But more specifically, has been making these videos as just a wellness person, a mom, and an active, concerned Iranian. She's in Vancouver, an Iranian-Canadian. Starts making these videos about the uprising on TikTok, on Instagram, and goes viral. And a lot of her stuff is very moving and very real, and has millions of views in some cases.
Relatable, I guess, and that's why she's gone viral.
Definitely,
the way she
definitely.
has, yeah.
She seems like she's coming from a really honest place. Hedieh Safiyari will join me from Vancouver in just a little bit, and then there's a woman in Germany. She's an Iranian-German activist. She's been working with refugees, women, LGBTQ concerns over the years. And has become, she actually is getting her PhD in social sustainability, and that was what she was studying in Iran, working with agriculture, farmers, etc. But has become very political, was first politicized during the Green Movement, and now is also making online statements and videos, etc., that get a lot of attention. Gets a lot of media, does a lot of media. Forouq Canaani. She's joining us from Frankfurt, Germany. So looking forward to having Forouq Canaani on the program. Let me segue before we get to the Roqe Roundup into something that's Germany related. Once in a while I deviate from not just from the revolution, but from Iranian-related content to talk about more important things like Arsenal. Yeah,
of course.
My forget family, tradition, war, and humanity.
It's all about football.
Let's talk about football.
Yes.
Do you know who Mesut Ozil is?
I do not.
Oh, you call yourself a football fan.
I never said I was a football fan.
Oh, it's your sister who's a football fan.
Yeah, my sister's more of a football fan. I just follow football as often as I
Mesut
can.
Ozil is a German of Turkish descent.
Okay. Could have guessed from the name.
And he's also actually quite a devout Muslim. Like he would always do shout outs to Muslims around the world, etc. Who played for the German national team, but more significantly, very, very creative player, really interesting guy, somebody I really liked as a player. Not a really big, stocky guy, I always like the players that are more like me, because I imagine I could be them. He's kind of like he's not a goulach.
Okay.
So Mesut Ozil, but also he was kind of dogged by controversy for being lazy or not trying hard enough for something, because he's one of those really naturally skilled guys. Played for Arsenal for years, helped us win the FA Cup, and was one of the Arsenal stars before he was mired in a sad ending at Arsenal. Ended up going back to Turkey to play, and now he's retired. He just retired yesterday.
Oh, was that the news?
That was the news.
That was all the lead up.
Why am I talking about Mesut
Okay.
Ozil? Well, for at least 7 people out there of the 100,000 who are listening right now to each of our broadcasts, this will mean something. And they're like, yeah, he's talking about Ozil. For everyone else, if I didn't distance myself from them with the not knowing what the fucking Nowruz, that is 2 week, it's a 2 week thing. Now with Mesut Ozil, I'm really losing the audience. So good. Thank you, Mesut Ozil, for the years of
congratulations on the retirement.
On the retirement. By the way, he's like 34.
Wow.
Yeah, it's over. Yeah, can you imagine?
Over at 34.
How old are you, by the way?
34. That's exactly
I know
why
how
I'm
old you are. You see? Yeah, it's over for some, and you're just beginning.
Thank God.
I also wanted to mention before we get to the Roqe Roundup that for those who want to give us feedback and who are inside Iran and don't want to post on our social media platforms, we've had a couple of people tell us and they're a little worried about putting themselves out there in terms of you can email us, which may be a safer way to do things, and we'll read your emails or put them into the mix of feedback that we're getting in terms of what we read out on the show. The email address, the simplest one, is info@roqemedia.com. info@roqemedia.com. All right. Let's get to the Roqe Roundup, because before we get to Hedieh and Forouq, there's been some things, Nowruz related things that have been happening both inside Iran and outside in the last few days that I know we want to address today. First and foremost, it was an interesting Nowruz, it seems, in Iran as well.
It was, yeah. Lots of interesting videos coming out of Iran. You know, I'm so used to seeing videos of Hafsin and the bazaar and, you know, things leading up to the celebrations and things like that. But lots of very different videos. We saw videos of numerous people out on the streets chanting and marking the new year, I guess, in a very different way. So there were videos before Santahvin and also after Santahvin, actually, of individuals on the street chanting "Death to Dictator," which was... You know, I mean, not a normal part of the Nowruz tradition. Not. Yeah, and you know, we saw these videos from a variety of cities. So I think Tehran, Karaj, Saqqez, and Mahabad were some of the main videos that I saw. But you know, there's been so many reports of other cities as well, and definitely not something that we're used to seeing, especially around this time of year. Yeah,
so it was clear that Nowruz was not just business as usual in Iran for at least some folks.
Absolutely.
And you know what I thought was interesting is that for everything I've been told, and what we always understand is that the mullahs, the ayatollahs, are not big fans of Nowruz, right? It's a non-religious Persian tradition that was celebrated by everyone before them, so they don't. Right. But then Khamenei, the supreme leader, does a Nowruz speech.
I think it's one of those things that he can't not. More than anything else. I don't think...
But like the Queen does the address on Christmas, presumably because she agrees with Christmas.
Yeah, but I don't think you can really relate the Queen to Khamenei. You know, like I think that's a very big very big gap.
Poor Queen. Yes, I'm sorry to the Queen. No, but I'm just like, why would he do an address? That's something that somebody can write in and explain to me. Why does he do an address on an occasion that he opposes, presumably?
I mean, it is the Persian New
Year,
right? Like he can't not address it in any way, shape, or form.
He can't ignore the Persian New Year.
Exactly. Right. I think it's more that than him, celebrating it and wanting to endorse it in any way, shape, or form. I think it's just,
Well, the other person or the people that were celebrating Nowruz this year, much more conspicuously, because we kind of know where Khamenei's interests lie. And perhaps we know where this person's or this administration's interests lie as well. There was a Nowruz gathering or party celebration at the White House.
Yes.
Now, I mean, in a normal year or in some of the more recent years, we would actually think this is a good thing. Recognition of Nowruz, and by extension, the Iranian community. This is great. The White House is getting involved and recognizing us, and we're not invisible anymore, et cetera, et cetera. This year, I did a bit of a double take. Sorry, what? A Nowruz, and then it turned out that a bunch of Iranian-American public people attended this thing, seemingly enthusiastically, given what they ended up posting in social media, and there were performances, and there was revelry and food, and Biden gave a speech which I watched to try and figure out what this thing was all about. So what is your take on this Nowruz gathering at the White House this year?
I mean, I think more than anything else, I was disappointed. And it's funny because my initial reaction, I think, was a little bit different than yours. It wasn't just a double take. I had a little bit more hope for this event this year, actually. I thought, in light of the last 6 months, this is a dedicated time where Biden could say something about the occurrences that took place.
Did you really think that?
Listen, I'm not saying that he was going to stand true to what he was going to say, but I thought at least he was going to make a slightly better speech than he did. I mean, for God's sake, he had one line in his entire speech that spoke to the occurrences of the last 6 months. The rest of it was all fluff.
Yeah.
I mean, yes, sure, he used the woman life freedom slogan, and he said, we wish you the best and we're going to support. And I actually wrote down a quote of what he said. He said, "We're going to hold the Iranian officials accountable for their attacks against their people." That was the only part of his speech that you could say was even remotely related to the atrocities.
And
of
it
the
also
last 6
means
months.
nothing.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So, I mean, like I said, my initial reaction was a little bit different. I was thinking that maybe he would elaborate on the occurrences of the last 6 months.
You thought at the Nowruz Party would be an occasion for Biden to give a highly politicized speech that would suggest a different tact and direction from what they've been signaling for the last few weeks, which is that they're basically going to enable and continue to work with this regime?
I didn't think that he was going to give a highly politicized speech changing gears. What I thought was he was going to use it at least as a photo op to make Iranians feel better about
that's
what
they
had been
did.
going on. No, he didn't even do that.
Well, they kind of did
that.
That. I mean, that's what. Look, sorry, I'm cutting you off. You go ahead. You finish. Go ahead.
Well, that was the first thing. So that was my initial reaction, and then after listening to it, I was supremely disappointed because, again, like I said, he said nothing. It was all fluff, bullshit. And then the other thing that really disappointed me, which you touched upon, was the Iranian-Americans who were there. I mean, it's one thing for me to have false expectations from someone like Joe Biden, but it's another to feel disappointed by the Iranian-Americans who were present. And I understand, I wasn't expecting anyone to ruin the event or to, stomp their feet and scream or anything like that, but then the posts on Instagram, I mean, the pictures of it was an honor and a privilege to be at the White House, and I understand, sure, maybe it was, but you couldn't even then take 5 minutes underneath that post to say, we wish he had said something. We wish that it would have been an opportunity for him to address some of the concerns. Anything. And none of that. I haven't seen one thing from anyone who attended as an Iranian-American voicing that. So that was the other really, really disappointing part for me.
Some of the people who were there have surely been critical of, I guess they've been critical of the regime in Iran. I don't know how look, let me first say that, sorry, were you done?
Yes.
All right. So let me, for the first part, in terms of the Biden administration, I don't have a problem with Joe Biden. I don't want to position this as some attack on the Biden administration because, first of all, I don't have a horse in that race in terms of the American politics and stuff. I mean, I watch it eagerly as a political junkie, but I don't really. And I've been, anybody who knows me. And has listened to even this show for the last three years. I was super critical of Trump on all kinds of things. But I don't think we gain anything by not pointing out either the hypocrisy or the problematic way that the Biden administration is dealing with the Iran situation right now. I think, in fact, we do a disservice to everything, ourselves, our respect for the Biden administration. Hey, we're going to be real with you. We're going to tell you, we're going to call you out when we think you're not doing what you should be doing. Right. And the problem is the delta between what they say and what they're actually doing. The supposed language, which we talked about so many times, the lip service of this is what we want to support democracy in Iran, the women, the people, and what they're actually doing, which is A, nothing, and B, worse than nothing, which is business as usual, enabling and not enforcing some of the sanctions, as we have so many guests come on and tell us, and working towards the resuscitation of the JCPOA. Right. So there's a reason why in recent months, everybody under the sun, we've done it a few times. I did an opening essay about it back in friggin' October. There's a reason we've been saying to Robert Malley to resign. Right? Yes. The special envoy for Iran, the Biden administration's special envoy for Iran, it has been in countless ways found evident to the Iranian community around the world that this guy and people in Iran who called out Robert Malley, the Irish Robert O'Malley, that Robert Malley as someone who whatever his interests are, they don't seem in line with the interests of the Iranian community, which is almost universally in favor of regime change. Yeah. There's different signaling coming from the Biden administration. So here's this guy there, and there's the Biden administration that we've all been sort of critical of, or at least disappointed with. Then they want to throw a garden party or whatever it was. Let's have a little song and dance about Nowruz.
Mm-hmm.
And my concern is, without attacking the Biden administration or the people who attended, my fear is that this little party set us back at least 6 months, maybe a year. And the reason is because these people in the Biden administration who have been subversively or maybe innocently, continuing to engage with the regime in Iran, and while they pay lip service to democracy and the freedom fight, etc., now have reason to say, you know what? We had a bunch of the high-profile Iranian-Americans at the White House, and they were cheering on Joe, and it's clear that we're on the right path. There's always going to be extremists who don't like what we're doing, but for the most part, we engaged with the community. We invited them into our home. They were here. Everything went well. They were all cheering. We took pictures together. It basically underscores, justifies, ratifies everything that the Biden administration has been doing, and therefore gives them reason for inaction. They can always point to this and say, well, we had a bunch of, aren't these some of your prominent people? They came and they were cheering and everything was fine, right? I mean, what are you guys so freaked out about? Oh, it must be these radicals who want. It's not radicals who want regime change at this point. It's everybody. So that's the concern for me. Is what are we doing here? And yes, if maybe at some point at this Nowruz party, they took Joe Biden and Robert Malley into a room somewhere and yelled at them and impressed them and told them, you're going to change the policies, please, and all. And so, I mean, we don't know exactly what happened there. So I will stand corrected if that happened, but it's not what we saw. What we saw was selfies and here we are and this is great and it just kind of sucked. It was like, come on, this is an opportunity. Don't go. There's basketball players or hockey players who don't go when they disagree with the president's policies. When they want to celebrate them and say, you won the Stanley Cup, they go, I can't come. I disagree with the war in Iraq. Yes. You don't have to go. And if you go,
use it as an opportunity.
Do a press conference outside the White House and say, we came here, but actually we disagree with the policies or something.
Well, this is why I was saying I was so disappointed with the social media feeds afterwards, because again, it's one thing. I'll even say I understand it's a big deal. You got invited to the White House. You want to go, fine. But for all these people who have been the quote unquote voice of the Iranian people the last 6 months, who have presented themselves as, the voice of the Iranian people, who have presented themselves as these activists, and I appreciate everything they've done so far. This is not to discredit them.
And I think some of them probably went to the White House with really good intentions.
Absolutely. Yeah. But what's been shown on social media the last couple of days does not reflect that. No, I have yet to see any of those people write something and say, we went and the Hafseen was great and we were honored to be invited, but, and then continued to say what they were upset about, similar to what we're talking about here. I have yet to see one individual do that.
Well, then maybe they'll do that, but
I hope so.
I don't even know if that's going to help. Not to overstate all of this. There's so many things going on. I mean, the Biden, Nowruz garden party, whatever I call it, a garden party. I don't know if it was in the garden. It was a Nowruz party, whatever. It was the same. They had the Ted Lasso people, and then they had the Nowruz, and But it really is just about using these opportunities, and it was a bit of a double take just because I thought Iranian-Americans were all critical of the Biden administration not doing more at this point and don't resuscitate the JCPOA and come on, we need to. And that doesn't mean we shun them or don't talk to them or, Jesus, if you get meetings with the White House, take the meetings and, make your case and all of that. But a party, it was, there's so many times in the last 6 months. I mean, people were saying don't play concerts, right? People were saying don't sit in the United Nations while this guy comes and talks. Symbolism is important, where you turn up, what you do. We debated, should we do Nowruz? Are we allowed to go to a gala? All of these things need to be talked through. This one, it was like, you get invited, so you run to the White House and everybody, I really worry that it set us back. Yeah. Maybe there were relationships forged at the White House during this Nowruz celebration that will convince the Biden administration to do a U-turn and celebrate and support that. And you know what? I mean, if they do, great. We stand corrected.
On that same note, and again, this is not of any importance in the grand scheme of things, but I have to say it. It really bothers me that Joe Biden and Dr. Biden can't get a couple of Farsi words right. Like, I mean, I don't know. Maybe it's just I'm a stickler for
You're not making fun of
words.
his speech patterns because we know that's
No, I just have
cool.
a problem with...
He's not the most
No,
perfect speaker.
That's not what I'm referring to. I'm referring to, the Baraye.
When she's giving the Grammy Award?
Well, the Grammy Award, and then again at the Nowruz celebration too. I mean, Hafseen Baraye Eid Shoma Mubarak, Nowruz Mubarak. That's all it was. And they couldn't even get that right. Like, it really bothered me.
Which one can you just pick one word that you want them to get right? I mean,
at the very least, Baraye. Like, come on.
Yeah, when
It's
she
really
was
not
giving
that
the
hard.
Grammy, I was like, come on, dude. You could have had a handler whispering the pronunciation in your ear for a few hours before the ceremony. But
Yeah.
and then the speech. It was so weird because I always thought, like, what? Why wouldn't you? You don't have to say something major and political, but it was like downgrading anything. You wouldn't even think much has gone on in Iran. There was that one line.
That's what I'm saying.
And at one point, he started talking about something else.
He did.
He wasn't even talking about Iran.
He
was
talked
talking
about political prisoners in West Africa.
in West Africa. Yeah, it was a whole other thing.
Yeah. And then it was a lot of conversation about opportunity for Americans because, the various opportunities. Because I think...
that's why we're in America. We're giving people opportunities.
Exactly. It was like a conversation about opportunities in America.
Are we expecting too much? Maybe we're,
I really don't think so. I mean, listen, we've seen the impact that at the very least, Iranian-Americans. I'm not even talking about the diaspora as a whole. Iranian-Americans, we've seen the impact that they have. We've seen the turnout. We've seen, the concern. We've seen the effect that they've had with congressmen and the Senate and the UN and here and there and all these places, and yet the president can't recognize that.
And I know we're not alone in this thinking because I saw Masih al-Najad wrote a very kind of aggressive post about that whole Nowruz Party and the shenanigans. I saw Yasmin Pahlavi was not happy about it. So it seemed like various opposition type leaders were saying, "Come on, what's going on here?" And so, all right, well. Anything else in the Roqe Roundup?
I think just one other thing I wanted to mention is the sad news that we heard of the passing of the 31-year-old Hossein al-Ali.
This was the one that they called a suicide? Or
So
this is in Iran.
This is in Iran, yes. So he was a 31-year-old originally from Shiraz. He was residing in Bandar Abbas, and he had been there for the last couple of years for work. And he was actively protesting the last couple of months, and in fact for the last 2 months he was in hiding because he had been threatened and he had been I think brought in for questioning, or there were some reports of him being brought in. And so last week there was a report that came out that he had committed suicide and jumped off of the 4th floor of a building. But then in the last couple of days it's come to light that he was actually pushed off this building. So he was killed by I think probably the IRGC or some sort of police force or something. But this isn't something new. We've seen and heard so many reports of individuals, quote unquote, committing suicide, and not even just in the last 6 months, but this is a tactic that the IRGC has used for years. So it's not that hard to believe that in fact it wasn't suicide and he was killed. But I just thought it's important to mention that there are still individuals being brutally killed.
What should we say his name again?
Yes, his name is Hossein al-Ali.
Thank you, Pegah. I mean, we are coming to you on rookmedia.com. It's there that you can link to all of our platforms, and we are on this ongoing mission to build a new audiovisual encyclopedia of Iranian diaspora identity. We're on Spotify, SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, Instagram, CastBox. If you want to see visuals with Rook, switch over to YouTube. If you like your Rook descriptions and bulletins in English and in Persian, check us out on Telegram. Now, you can become a Rook member. You can join us on our Patreon page and help support what we do here by going to rookmedia.com, and pressing the Support Us button. We really appreciate when folks become Roqe members on our Patreon page. You can do so for as a bronze, silver, or gold member. The bronze is just $10 a month, and it really helps us to stay alive and do what we do. We depend on crowdsourcing. I've been mentioning a new Patreon member each show, and I'll do that today as well. And we have a new gold member, and it's Dr. Amir Ruzati. And I've got to say, Dr. Ruzati, he has been, I want to give him a proper shout out here, because not only did he just become a gold member, but he's been super supportive of Forouq. He's sponsored a couple of things in the past. He's actually a really great supportive person in the Persian community in Canada. He's this award-winning physician, works in the Botox field as well. He's a GP, but also a beauty and cosmetic person in a very advanced way. He runs a company called Skin Beauty MD in Toronto. It's in Thornhill, my old stomping grounds there growing up. His knowledge and expertise in both fields of medicine and beauty and cosmetic stuff are really impressive. Anyway, Dr. Amir Ruzati, thank you so much for becoming a gold member on our Patreon page. And I wanted to give him a proper shout out today just because he has so regularly been supportive.
Absolutely.
All right. Should we get to our guests?
Yes.
Here we go. My first guest today is an Iranian-Canadian budding social media star with 20 years experience as a health clinician in Canada. Hedieh Safiyari is the founder and CEO of Prompt Health, which is an online platform and app with a mission to empower individuals seeking wellness solutions and wellness businesses. So Hedieh moved to Canada with her family at the age of 16. She obtained her master's in cardiac rehabilitation from the University of British Columbia. She's also a digital media creator with over 700,000 followers on different social media platforms. I think it's way more than that if you add them together, where she talks to her audience about health and wellness. And more recently, she's been very active and focused on supporting the uprising in Iran. Some of her videos for the cause have gone viral, of course, and she has also just published her first book entitled Understand You, I Asked, You Answered. And right now, Hedieh Safiyari joins me from Vancouver, Canada today. Hello.
Hi, Jian. I'm so happy to be here with you, and I'm excited to have this conversation with you. Thank you.
I'm happy to have you on the show. I've been watching your videos for months, and now here you are. Your first question in this new book of yours is, what is your name and one thing about you? I don't know if you knew I was going to do this to you. I'm going to throw some of these questions back at you. We know your name, of course, because I've just introduced you, and people would know you if they follow you. How would you answer the question, one thing about you?
So this is interesting because this is what I asked on TikTok from people, and it was very interesting how everyone answered it. Because whether you talk about your job or whether you're a mom or dad or your personality or the first thing that comes to your mind and how you would go about describing yourself. And I tried to describe myself as best as I could in one of the videos that I put out. But first of all, I grew up part of my life in Iran until I was 16, and then spent most of my life now in Canada. So I'm an Iranian-Canadian woman. My background is in health, so I'm a health professional, right now also an activist, and I'm trying to use my voice to help anyone, and anyone who's been struggling after pandemic. As we know, the world has been upside down, and first I created an app, a health app to do that, and then I got involved in different social media platforms to use my voice. And now with what's happening in Iran, I felt the responsibility to do that, and here we are.
It's a great answer. I don't think that qualifies as one thing about you, but
I know there's too many different things.
You haven't learned how to answer your own question.
I know. Well, it's like too many things. I'm a mother also, that I should say.
That's many things about you.
Yes.
But it was a good answer. Listen, I want to get to your book. I want to get to your personal story of coming to Canada that you just referenced from Iran. Let me ask you first, though, because you have been so very prolific in making videos and being active during this uprising of the last 6 months for freedom in Iran. Hedieh, how would you describe the last 6 months for you?
It's been a roller coaster of emotions because I posted my first video about Iran on TikTok, and because I felt I'm responsible, having a voice to create awareness. And after posting a few videos, I got warnings that, because the algorithm there is so sensitive, that if I post one more video, I'll be banned. So I moved to Instagram and I, just dedicated my entire Instagram to Iran. And every day and every hour, there was a different news. So then here you are as a mother, as an entrepreneur, as, having so many different responsibilities, keeping up with all the news and what's happening. And I went on this roller coaster of, emotions and ups and downs, and the responsibility that I have to do something and create awareness. So I just kind of went with it without even thinking. And I'm still going without thinking, I think a lot of us have been in that fight and flight mode. And part of it perhaps goes back to childhood and all the years that we couldn't speak. And now it's like, here we are, it's all like spilling out and you don't know what to do with it. So it's been a crazy ride, but we're in it together.
You have a daughter, Sarina, right? Her name is Sarina.
Yes.
What did she teach you about the power of making videos online?
So this was interesting. It actually started as a challenge between her and me because she's 13, and kids at this age, or teenagers at this age, they are so good with short videos. So I watched her and her friends making all these the fun videos and dance videos on their private accounts on TikTok. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And she was like, Mom, this is for kids. And I'm like, I don't think so. I don't think it's had 1 billion downloads in the past year. And I don't think this is for kids. So it started as this fun challenge between us. And, I started it, and soon I learned, nope, it's not for kids. There are lots of adults, and there's lots of things that can be done in this world that we can all contribute to.
Is she enthusiastic or pissed off that her mom is doing so well on social media?
Well, she's going to kill me after listening to this video, but I think kind of pissed off because when I go pick her up at school, all the kids know me because I'm the mom on TikTok. Right. And it's interesting. Anyway, so I dedicated my book to her because it came out of a TikTok journey, and hopefully one day I don't know if she's proud secretly or not, but she doesn't show it.
I mean, just before we get into your story, just in terms of the way you're perceived these days, whether it's by your daughter's friends or by people out there around the world seeing you on social media, I mean, you were a competitive swimmer. You were an athlete when you came from Iran at the age of 16. You subsequently go into the healthcare industry. You're this entrepreneur. Is it strange for you to be seen as a political or social activist these days?
I don't know. All I see are people thanking me for what I'm doing. So I'm not sure what people think. But I think when you put yourself out there like this, you can't really think what other people think. You just do everything out of the goodness of your heart. And I think people see whether you're genuine or not. And I have been nothing but genuine because I واقعا از صمیم قلبم کردم, and everything that I've done ever since pandemic, I've tried to use my entire background, which led to where I am today, to inspire and help people.
Well, I mean, you're certainly hardworking. I mean, I can't keep up with your output is amazing in terms of the videos that you do, given that you have these other things in your life that you're also working on. Let me ask you then about, I suppose to begin, about growing up in Iran. In your book and in a video you posted, Hedieh, in September, you referenced that you were born in Iran in the year of the Islamic Revolution, and subsequently had a childhood that included having to cover your hair in elementary school and being banned from singing and dancing and listening to music publicly, never learning to interact with boys and getting harassed by morality police. These are all things we know about the suppressive environment in Iran over the last 44 years, especially for women. But how aware were you of your freedoms being curbed when you were a kid growing up in those environments?
I wasn't. And that's why I'm so mad right now. And I'm really speaking for all the years that we couldn't speak, because I was born the year of revolution. So I don't know anything before that. So when you don't have a reference point, it is what it is, right? And, it was hard growing up in Iran because it was 8 years of war and having classrooms underground in shelters, and every time like leaving a house as a teenager. And part of me, because I have a teenage daughter right now, I look at her life and so much freedom and how we grew up as kids and teenagers. And every time there were so many occasions where I was not just picked on, I was taken to Vozara, which is a jail, for wearing red pants for like I was a kid, or why are you wearing these shoes? They would ask you to go home because they didn't like your shoes. It was just harassment day after day. And the whole morality police experience, I have so many stories about it that I can literally write a comic book on it, because you leave the house and there is a bus there and they're like, get in the bus. So you kind of knew you just have to get in the bus. And it just, you become numb to it because it's just your day-to-day
reality
living.
And it's the 80s and the 90s, and so you don't have the internet, so you don't have a daily dose of seeing exactly how kids are living in other places in the world. You just assume this is the reality.
This is the reality. And we traveled as a family to Europe and stuff, so we, as we started getting older, we knew what's happening, and we immigrated with the family here. And now, with everything that's happening with this uprising, I feel like everything just spilled out, and all the years, and and keep asking why didn't we say anything, and why did that happen, and why did they have to pick on us so much? And so there's a lot of anger and the inner child fighting.
It's interesting. It's been such a journey the last few months doing these interviews and talking to people who, not just when you say it was suppressed in you, but in a lot of cases, a lot of people actually detached themselves from Iran. Just said, I have nothing to do with that. I don't want to even think about it. And now all these emotions come to the fore because it gets very personal. Tell me about the decision to move to Canada. What was the precipitant for that?
Well, that was one of the reasons, because the safety issue, obviously, because as a girl, every time you leave the house, you don't know if you're going to come back or not. So as safety, the harassment, future education, having a good, future. So those were all the reasons that my family wanted to move, immigrate.
It's tough too. I was just thinking as you were talking about Iran, we've spent years living this contradiction too, where this is a program that is based on conversations with, to, and about the Iranian diaspora. So it's inside baseball, if you will. We're two Iranians talking about this, but I've always had a fear as well at the same time of saying all the things you just said about growing up in Iran, because to a non-Iranian, to somebody who doesn't know anything about Iran, because you don't want that to be interpreted as this horrible place, meaning that the culture and the people and all of that gets thrown into these stereotypes that we don't want to underscore. Do you know what I mean? It's been very confusing, and it's, I guess, one of the nice things about the last 6 months is to have the liberation of chanting in the streets so that people around the world see that Iranians are not the regime of Iran, and are much more than that, and want this change.
Absolutely, and I think now the whole world knows that, which is great. And to your point, I think a lot of the things that became norm for us, understanding that how abnormal it was, you can, like, when you say some of the stories and you laugh at it because واقعا they're ridiculous, and you see the reaction in the non-Iranian faces, they're like, oh my God, that is not normal, right? And then you realize, oh my God, that was not.
Yeah. And it still isn't. I mean, I try and do that all the time, because as Iranians, you can't walk your dog. This is insanity. You know, you can't play rock music. This is crazy. I mean, it's not, you know, and of course people have to live their normal lives. So this all becomes normalized, because you can't just be walking around in outrage 24/7. But it is insane. It is not normal. It isn't the way people should be living, right?
Absolutely. And you know, like the recent dance with the calm down music that's been happening, the new trend, I asked my daughter to do it with her friends, so we can show that the Iranian Canadians are supportive. And she said, what's so unique about that? And I said, because girls in Iran can dance. And she's like, no, you're joking. I just don't think, and that's one of the reasons I want to inspire the younger generation Iranian girls that are growing outside of Iran to actually understand and appreciate what they have, because some of the things that we have, we take so for granted that other people in different parts of the world don't have.
When you come to Canada, after you end up in the West, you end up studying human kinetics, and then you pursue this master's in cardiac rehab, and you work as a clinician for over 15 years. What did you most learn by working in the private Canadian healthcare system?
Good question. Well, obviously, I saw a lot of patients, and a lot of the manifestations of disease, that first of all, mental health and physical health are not separate from each other, right? And I think after pandemic, the whole stigma with mental health not went away, but it's better, like it's easier for people to talk about it. But a lot of the problems that people have, physical conditions and symptoms that they have, it comes from mental health too, or vice versa. So they're totally related. And also, most people are not proactive about wellness. They only get help when they're sick or something is broken. So that's the main reason I created Prompt Health, because and I keep talking about it, and I still think people are not proactive, because we wait when it's too late, right? And just like you know, you don't have to wait for your car to be broken. You just take it for regular maintenance. Right. Our body is the same.
But was the insinuation that wellness is not only about physical health but mental health? Were you suggesting that in the private healthcare industry or the Canadian healthcare industry, that mental element of it has not always been at the forefront, that it's sort of like, let's deal with whatever's going on physically and send the person back out there without dealing with the mental side?
Well, you know, I was working in a private clinic that's one of the pioneers of private health in Canada, that was later on acquired by a larger organization, and we offered a variety of services to look at the person as a whole, right? So there were so many different services, not just medical, but alternative and counseling and life coaching and different things. And we had the luxury of time to spend more time with these people as opposed to 5 minutes in and out. And during these times, you see that people have, there's so many things going on, and they're all like related, and it can't be solved by one person. Sometimes it requires a team of people, and they're not necessarily sure where to start.
You know, I've had a lot of cancer in my family. It seems to be something that weaves through both sides of my parents' families. Tell me about the effect that your mom having cancer had on you.
Well, that was really hard, and she had two cancers back to back. So within 10 years, she went through two cancers and radiation, and then all the treatments after that. And I'm the older daughter with three younger brothers. So it was tough because it was almost like, we thought we lost our mom, and she is such a strong woman, and I think I get all my, I would say, bravery from her. And even through all this uprising, she's the one who's like, we have to be together, and all those things. So that was that was a tough experience.
I thought that was I was partly asking because I felt like that was part of what initiated you to want to do more in the healthcare space, was it not?
I started that before my mom. That was one of the reasons I did the health app. I created the health app. But the reason I studied human kinetics was mostly because of my athletic background. When you grow up as being involved in any sport, it's a natural desire to want to learn more about the human body, right? And that's why I went into human kinetics, which is the study of human body. And then later on became interested in heart, and when I did my master's in that, and then later on I completely changed direction and went and did the MBA later on, and that led to creation of putting it all together and creating this app. And I think the app came from my experience in healthcare for all those years and seeing the gap where people had a difficulty finding the care they need. Also, my mother finding the care they need. So like the personal and professional experience of where I saw the gap in our healthcare system.
Gotcha. Tell me what you use when you talk about wellness practices. A lot in your discourse is the term holistic wellness. And I think I know what that is, but I thought maybe I would ask you to define it.
It's looking at body as a whole, so the whole mind, body, and so a lot of people hear the term mind, body, soul approach. So it's looking, our wellness is not one-dimensional; it's multidimensional, which is like physical, mental, emotional, social, spiritual health. So they're all connected, right? In order to feel well, we are not only supposed to take care of our physical body, but also our mental health, but also our emotional health. So that's why our relationships matter. What happens in our environment matters. It's not just what we eat and how we exercise, but it's also how we interact and
Gotcha.
The kind of environment we're in. And that's the holistic approach, because it's looking at the body as the person as a whole, what's happening as a whole.
Hedieh, tell me now, how and when did you decide? Do you remember the moment when you decided to jump in and start making videos about the uprising? I mean, you've said that you felt compelled to do so. Was there a particular moment after the killing of Mahsa Amini where you said, okay, here I go?
Yes. And I don't know if I should share this, but I will. So my ex-husband came and told me, you have to do this. And he said, you have a voice that's been really powerful on social media. Go for it. I support you. And you're responsible to do this. And until that moment, I was kind of unsure, because I was like, I don't want to get political. And, I'm here to talk about wellness, and what do I have to do with political? And he said, you have a voice, it's powerful, you have a platform, it's your responsibility to do this. And I was like, okay. And I said, but and he said, not a lot of people talk because people are afraid. And I'm like, yeah, and I know, because people are afraid of consequences. And he said, start with that, just say that. So I came on and I said, Do you know why people don't talk? Because for 44 years, we've been trained to not talk. And I'm here to tell all the stories that haven't been told.
And how did that feel?
It was liberating, and that's when I couldn't stop, because I just kept going. And it was like day and night of like all the stuff that's been happening, and still happening, and I'm just kind of going with it, because I'm like, okay, well, we're going all the way to the end, and I have no doubt that there will be an end, because no injustice hasn't gone forever.
Were you surprised by the virality of some of your posts? I mean, your videos have been, a few of them have been seen over, millions of times. I mean, that's you've had quite an impact. Did that come as a surprise to you?
I honestly thought like Instagram is dead. Like, I was surprised by how like crazy it went on Instagram. I had no idea what to expect. I definitely did not expect it. It was just, I did it out of my pure heart, and I went from this platform to that platform, just making sure the voice is heard. And I even went back to TikTok and created another, account talking about Iran, and that's also under warning. But I just did everything I can to get the voice out, and it's working, and I'm grateful. And I hope, and not only I hope, I'm 100% sure there will be an end. It might take longer than we want, but there will be an end.
We've talked about mental health a bit through this chat. Let me ask you about mental health vis-a-vis the Iranian community. I mean, you give lots of advice on anxiety and coping. How do you see, from your vantage point, as an Iranian Canadian in Vancouver, but being very active in terms of interaction with the Iranian community, I suppose, around the world, how do you see the community affected by anxiety in recent months?
It's crazy. And I did one video, and I said a lot of us Iran, and it was during the time that there was a lot of executions happening. So it affected my personal mental health for sure. Like, there was a time that I like found myself so like I had nightmares, I couldn't sleep, and I felt, I don't want to say depressed. I've never been depressed, but I felt that I'm not myself, and I was like, I cannot announce another execution, so I need to take a step back and like do something else and come back to this. So I switched to mental health, and I was like, I woke up that morning and I said, a lot of us Iranians wake up to bad news every day, and this is affecting our mental health. And everybody connected with that, and I realized, okay, like, it's not just me. So I started interviewing some of the top psychologists that we have in the community, and sharing some of the awareness psychology videos, and everybody seemed to connect with it. So it's an epidemic, and it's not just what was happening after pandemic to non-Iranians, but more like to a lot of Iranians right now, because of all the bad news and everything that's happening.
Do you have a personal coping ritual or mechanism? Do you take a pill? Do you do yoga? Do you turn off the phone? What's your way of dealing?
I need to turn off the phone more. So I still need to practice that. I go for a run. Run is kind of my meditation. I find that really helpful. I go for a walk.
Do you bring the phone when you run?
No,
Okay.
I don't. So I go for so nature, I think, is super helpful. Like, just going outside for like a walk or a run is very helpful for me. I've tried to do meditation. I haven't been super successful at it because I have a hard time just sitting still. But anything, like, there are different things that work for different people. It could be meditation, it could be breathing, running, talking with friends, seeking help, like different things that can help you, just trying different things to see what helps. I went on a wellness retreat in December, and I tried different breathing practices there for the first time, and I found it super helpful. So I'm trying to do more of that whenever I can. And I share some of them that are useful sometimes.
It's also, I find it interesting. I mean, I've had this issue with our program where once you start getting into the practice of wanting to help and share information and make videos and all that, say, you're doing in social media, then you start to feel like you have some responsibility. I mean, there isn't actually anyone telling you that, nobody's going to be incredibly mad at you if you don't post about the person who just got executed. But you start to feel that need, and then you feel guilty or shame or something if you're not posting because there's things happening. Have you felt those feelings, and have you been able to forgive yourself if you're just one person. You're not Amnesty International. You can't do everything.
I
right?
know, totally. And I tried to keep up with it, and I did everything. I have had no life in the past 6 months, like zero life, because there's so many different things I'm doing, and my content on TikTok is different from content on Instagram, and there's my business, there's my daughter, there's so many different things that you're trying to cover, and there's only so many hours in the day, right? So I think you still need to take the time to take care of yourself. And I try to share some of that too with people in terms of self-care and, mental health, because I know it's not just me, it's everyone. But I think just listening to your intuition, and that's what I've been doing. Every time I post something, I just listen to my gut, and I'm like, I feel like this is needed right now, and I just do that.
In and amongst all the things you're doing, tell me about this book that you've just released. I had fun reading it. Why did you have the idea to ask a bunch of questions and crowdsource the answers?
So it all started with one night when I was trying to create awareness about wellness because of this app that I built, and that's when I started getting active on social media. And I realized when I talk about health, no one really cares. So one night, late night, I just picked up my phone and I just talked right into it. And I said, does anyone care about health, or am I wasting my time? And that video blew up, and people were like, ask more questions. And we're here, we're listening. And I realized people want to be engaged. It's not just me talking to people all the time. They want to talk back. So as we had, I was going live often. So as we were having these live conversations, different topics were coming up. And there were a lot of topics around mental health, relationship, different uncertainties in life, personal development, that kind of stuff. So all the questions came out of the live conversations that I was having with people, and the questions that people were asking me. So I turned the questions back at them, and I was like, here's a question, what do you guys say? And then there were thousands of answers by people, which was quite interesting. And when the question, and so then every day, not every day, every few days, I would get on and I start with question, what would you do for this question? What would you do for that? And soon I became for Hedieh's questions. People were looking forward to the questions and answers, because a couple of days later, I would make another video with the answers. And then I thought it would be good to put this all together and give it back to people and say, here's all the questions I ask, and this is your answers, and just a bit of my take on it with it. And that's how it all happened.
It's a real lesson in how there's both beauty and education in simplicity. The questions are relatively simple, they're sort of obvious ones, but put together and put into a book, and they're so provocative. I think I left you a message saying, as I was reading the book and going, the questions, I found myself asking myself the questions that you were asking people, and it was quite a meditation. It was kind of like, there's questions like, what would you say if there were no consequences to say whatever you want? You sort of go,
Yeah.
oh, I got to think about this. How am I going to answer this? And
Yeah.
it's a very
Well,
simple question, but it's actually quite a profound one, because it
yeah.
digs at at your inner self to sort of say, well, who is the authentic me? What would I say? Who do I want to be? Why do I not say it? What are the consequences? I mean, there's a lot that comes through this, right? And so it's really well done. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yeah,
That
it was quite a learning experience for myself. And I think the answers that were provided were so honest because it was anonymous, right? Like it gave people a safe space to anonymously say something. And some of them were crazy because like the question that was, when did you know it was over? And like there were like people just like let it all out, and it was like almost like a healing experience because you could finally just let it all out, And so then I started thinking like how can I ask more thought-provoking questions, like when was the last time you smiled? When was the first time you did something for the first time? So all those questions, because it's so easy with how crazy life is to get on an autopilot and just work like a 9 to 5,
Yeah.
5-day weekend, just looking forward to the weekend and like not thinking and just autopilot, right? And when we're more self-aware by asking some questions, I think we can live a more fulfilled life.
Well, I'm so grateful for the time that you're giving us today. So I'm going to end off with 3 questions for fans of yours. They can learn more about Hedieh. Right now, as I turn your book around on you and ask you questions that you inspired by your book, in one part of the book, you address the question, what would you tell your younger self? Always a great question in an interview. And your personal answer, you describe that in the book, is to, quote unquote, be bold. And this is kind of one of your mantras, right? And it makes sense. And you seem very strong and confident and bold in your pronouncements and knowledge of self. And we've learned today that some of that comes from your mom, you said. My question is, how do you believe you could be bolder?
Right now, I don't think I could be any bolder right now because I'm just basically like risking a lot of things by doing what I'm doing on social media. I pretty much like can't go to Iran anymore. But I'm trying to show mostly my daughter and all her friends, the younger generation, that you have the power to do anything you want, right? Like you have all the freedom in the world, you have the power. If you have the willpower, you can do it all. There's nothing stopping you. And so one of my main goals is to really inspire the younger generation.
Your website features that slogan, be the best version of you. What is the best version of Hedieh?
The best version of me is I'm hoping that I can inspire and empower people, and even knowing that I have touched one life makes me happy.
And a final question to you. At one point in your book, you talk about asking oneself what our purpose is. That's a great question. What is a simple one again? What is your purpose? But it's a profound one too. Hedieh, I'm curious if your purpose has changed in any way since the uprising in Iran began in September.
My purpose, I'm living my purpose right now, and that's why I'm so happy, and I do what I do so tirelessly because I think there is a reason we all end up doing what we're doing and everything that happens in our life, and everything that led to where I am today, from the healthcare background to immigration to my professional and personal life to today. There was a reason for all of that, and I'm living it, and I'm not letting nothing is stopping me. We have all the freedom here in Canada, and I'm using my voice to speak for the voiceless in Iran and empower anyone and inspire anyone that I can, and that makes me happy.
It's really great to talk to you. I thank you for the time. I thank you for all the work you've been doing, and I look forward to doing. And do come visit us in Toronto. Let's do the interview in the studio next time.
Absolutely. And I want to thank you, واقعا خسته نباشین, for everything that you do. I listen to Roqe podcast and I enjoy your episodes, and thank you for everything you're doing.
Thank you so much. Take care of yourself and say hi to Sarina.
Thank you so much.
Khudafiz.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Khuda.
This is Roqe, episode 249, 6 months and counting, the uprising. My next guest is an Iranian-German activist. Forouq Canaani is a PhD student in the social sustainability department at the University of Kassel, but she may be known to many Iranians inside and outside of Iran for her eloquent and outspoken appearances in media, particularly during this uprising in such places as Manoto TV, BBC Persian, and Iran International. She has been fighting for the rights of women, refugees, and LGBTQ people for years, and right now, Forouq Canaani joins me from Frankfurt today. Hello.
Hello, Jian. Thank you so much for your invitation.
It's a great pleasure to have you on the show, and I happen to know that you speak a gazillion languages, so we could be doing this in Arabic or Spanish or German or various other languages, but for the sake of our show and our audience and me, we'll do it in English, okay?
Yeah, let's do it in English, even though I have to confess that my English is not that perfect. So I hope that your audience don't get any problem by understanding me.
No, your English is just fine. I've seen you do interviews in English. I know it's fine. Forouq, let's get right to it. In the aftermath of the killing of Mahsa Amini back in September, you said, "Now I'm going to war," and I think it's a sentiment that many Iranians around the world would understand. Do you feel like you've been at war for the last 6 months?
Well, I have this feeling for more than 6 months. It's like exactly at the moment that I left the country, or even before. I think this feeling of being a warrior started in 2009. Like, I really felt it in 2009 when I've seen everything that we have been through. Like, is this political games that people got back to the days in 2009 in Green Movement, and after that, how the protests went on and how the regime totally brutally tried to suppress people. And I think the very thought point for me was when exactly Neda Sultan got killed. And that was exactly the moment that I thought, oh my God, I cannot breathe anymore in this air, in this atmosphere. And I remember that I was all the time in this, even though I didn't even participate in election. But I thought maybe it's a hope for change. When I left the country and I experienced so-called free society, then I figured it out. Wow, that's a big difference. Having access to all the information, or almost all the information that you as a free citizen have to have. It was always something that we tried to get, we never did. So I think that started back to the days when I came out, and even though I really just really did my best to stay just a researcher and a scientist, but it was just not possible. Someone needed to talk.
When you say you had access to information that you didn't in a free society that you didn't have before, do you mean that when you were in Iran, you didn't even know how repressed you were, or do you mean that you learned more about Iran when you left?
Well, no. You always know how repressed you are. That's not something that someone just being in a, I mean, we're human, we are not fish. Let's say, okay, now we are not in the sea, so we don't know how free or not free we are. Actually, it was the information that I got about Iran, like the second option that you just mentioned. knowing a lot of information that was not free to access back to the days when we were in Iran. And that helped me, especially when I compared the human rights situation in European countries, let's say Germany that I was resident in, and the life conditions that we, especially women, had in Iran. I'm not saying that men had better life. I have been so many men struggling for freedom as well, but it was moments that I was thinking. I mean, I went really deep in a depression phase, like for a couple of weeks, just by comparing. And I was wondering, okay, if I keep silent, they're going to talk about it. People in Iran are like in danger. If they start complaining or even saying something or objecting, the first thing that will come is that they're not free anymore. Jail or any kind of other punishment will be waiting for them. So who's going to talk? So I really wanted to get the chance to go back to Iran whenever I want, because I came here as a student with a visa, and it was actually was with Iranian like Islamic Republic passport, which made it totally dangerous for me to get into political activities.
Yes.
But somehow I felt I need to do it. Someone should do it.
Well, it's interesting because your story is, I mean, you said earlier, you're a researcher, you're a scientist, and there is this story of how, I mean, I know you only as this eloquent and outspoken activist today, but going back 15 years, you're this 25-year-old student working in landscaping in Tehran at that time of the Green Movement, and you sort of almost by accident become this activist because of your outrage at what's happening, and that feels like very much the story. I mean, with you, it's been a few more years, but we hear from a lot of people in the last 6 months, even, including the guest I just had on before you. She was, doing work that really wasn't the work of an activist, you'd say, and now has become known as this activist against the Islamic Republic. It's almost like this regime induces or provokes the people of the country into necessarily needing to be activists to try and deal with what's going on. Is that basically what happened to you in 2009?
Well, yeah, partially. In 2009, the sparkle started. But when I felt really that I should do something was in 2017, when the first recent movement, which was actually the so-called Ghomeshi Benzin or Deimah, we called it, started. It was in December 2016, January 2017, if I'm right. And I remember we got really crazy that when we saw that people are just getting killed because they demonstrated, and it was like a long time after 2009. It was like less and less hope for any coming uprising because everything was suppressed. The presidential election were very well participated, and people like me totally, well, not totally, but almost got close to maybe lose the hope on Iran's political situation. And back to the days I was not active in social science. So I remember when I started tweeting and writing and getting active and informing about, once a mother of those who was killed during this uprising wrote me, and just randomly, I could understand that she's just randomly writing whoever was writing for Iran right now, especially those who are living abroad, just please be our voice. My child is killed. I changed my Twitter account from then, so I don't remember who this was. I didn't save it. And well, maybe that was not right. Maybe she writes me again once, but I promised her I will. And that was the moment. And I promised her I never will take off my black until she gets hers. And then she said she's not going to unless the Islamic Republic is gone. So here we go. I'm in black.
Wow, that is it's quite a commitment. Just on the war. I don't know if it's an allegory or it's a reality. I mean, we could call it a war. We've called it a war before between this regime and the people of Iran. Something you've talked about in one of your interviews that I thought was really interesting is the fact that even if this wasn't a war, the actions of this regime create the conditions where it is an ongoing war. You talk about when you imprison 20,000 people for simply expressing their dissent in recent months, or you kill or torture or injure innocent people, including children, during an uprising, those people will never forget this, and it will only grow the war against the regime. Can you speak to that?
Well, it is a war, even though we are not warriors, even though not all of us at least, and even though we are not ready for it, and even though we are not armed for it. It is a war. It's imposed to us, and we have to fight back, or we have to lose. So this is like a social decision, I would say, to stand up against it or just to go under. And I believe the social intelligence of Iranian nations so far show that they are struggling, but they're standing against it. It's too difficult. I have to admit, it's so weird, but still very difficult to understand that we are fighting a totalitarianism, which is a regime who is not only a dictator, but also a very weird combination of all the bad things that we had in the world's history, considering like the East Germany, plus Nazism in Germany, maybe, plus ISIS. All the three together, when they come together, then they result in something that we know as the Islamic Republic in Iran. We have not only a dictator inside the country, we have a regime who doesn't hesitate to expand his terror attacks all around the world. You just need to Google simply a couple of words like Islamic Republic, terror history, and then you get the results that is like, wow, what did this regime do all in the time in the world? It's just crazy.
But if it's a war, Forouq, how do you respond to somebody saying, how can it even be a war, where on one side you have people who are armed with nothing, in a lot of cases kids, with nothing but some rocks or homemade devices, and on the other side a full military and bombs and warplanes and ammunition, and I mean, it doesn't seem like a very fair fight. How can we even engage in that war? What do you respond to somebody saying that?
This is not a fair war. I never said so, and I don't believe that anyone would even believe if I say it's a fair and we are both at the same level armed. No, we are people. The only thing that we are having just in front of such a armed terrorist brutal system is our blood and flesh. We don't have anything else. We have maybe stones, if we have any, and we just have defense facilities, like we have our water bottles just to wash our faces. We have our lighters. I don't know what we have against them. Nothing. But like our voices and our passion and our dignity. What else do we have? And that's actually makes it for me a very decent war, to be honest. When I look at how much people are fighting for, it's not easy to be an Iranian when you're coming from such a country that you actually could die for. You just love it because it's a lovable country, but it's like under the rule of such a regime. That's like always a complex situation, a paradoxical situation, because I would say every Iranian, doesn't matter if you're living inside or outside of the country, you're suffering from.
Can I ask you, I mean, a personal question? If you, given that you talk about how passionate you are about this and your love for Iran, obviously, what has it been like working for women and equal opportunities in Germany in recent years? I know you're grateful and invigorated by doing this kind of work, but is there part of you that has wished you were doing it in Iran? Is there part of you that wants to be on the streets right now?
I think that's the interesting part of being immigrant. Being a migrant is amazing, especially if you're the first generation. Well, children having migrant family have totally different stories, but being a migrant is a very unique experience because at least I'm talking about myself, and I'm sure pretty much that a lot of people would think and feel like me. We are always facing a parallel world. Like right now I'm talking to you here. I just need to close my eyes for a couple of seconds, and then bam, I'm back. I'm back home. I'm thinking about Iran. I'm thinking about my memories. I'm thinking about the family that I had there, and everything, the landscape, the atmosphere, the smells, the people. And now that we're just shortly before the Nowruz, I'm thinking about this very, very interesting atmosphere before Nowruz, that everyone is just now in hurry to buy. And I know that it's not the case anymore, knowing about, like, considering the financial and economical situation of people back to the after, or better to say, post-embargo situation. But still, all these memories. And when I came here, I figured it out immediately that, being migrant is not easy either, even though it's like a developed country, and they're trying their best to just eliminate any kind of discrimination, but it's still there.
Right.
It's still there. So I think I really need to do it here too, just as a part of my contribution for the people who have the same story as mine.
Well, and also, I mean, there's no doubt that it's not like, there aren't equality issues or things to do in other places of the world, including Germany. But one of the things that has come up, I would say, I guess, in the last 6 months quite a bit in terms of talking to people around the world, Iranians, is, for better or for worse, and this is part of our psychological disposition, is a feeling of guilt. Like that. I mean, I feel it, and I didn't even grow up in Iran. I mean, that somehow I wish I was there doing something. I wish I was in front of that bullet that hit Keon, or to do something that, rather than, and of course we find our ways to contribute. I do this program, you do all the work that you're doing from Germany. But as somebody who's not that far removed from being in Iran and being an activist there, it must not always be easy for you.
Oh, it's not easy at all. I think it was, well, Mahsa Amini was not the first victims of Islamic Republic and its bloody, brutal rules. But the way that she died, it was a big shock to many of people. I mean, she was not dead. She got killed, better to say. She was murdered. Well, all this story really hit us. But something that really touched me was, I don't know why, but due to some reasons, probably that I'm not even aware of, the murder of Sarina really touched me. And then that was the moment that I couldn't help it to cry. And I was just wishing maybe I should go back. Maybe I should do something. Maybe better be dead than alive. And seeing all this, like, teenagers getting killed because people like me didn't do their job better. And all these bad feelings that I had all the time. But it got the most when the executions started, and we could see that it will come, and we could see that that's like the like a slap in the face of the nation. So they will start executing, because that gives us a shock, especially the people that they chose to kill. Said Mohammad Hosseini, Kian. Wow, that was like really, really a fatal hit for me. And I barely could control myself. That was the first time that I cried in front of the camera. That was the first time that I cried in front of people, when I made a speech in Berlin in one demonstration. And I'm sure many people filmed it. I really didn't care at the moment, because I thought, okay, wow, I'm here. I'm almost safe. And they're not. But then, then I've noticed that I'm not safe here, because, the police of Germany and many other European countries announced that we need to take care, because apparently Islamic Republic is now spreading his agents all around the world, especially in Europe, that have been always the good alliances of them. So then I feel like, honestly, if it's relief, it's like, okay, well, I'm not safe here, do so better.
You may not be safe. I mean, whether you're safe or not, you did jump into it pretty quickly. I mean, one week after the death of Mahsa Amini, you were there at a public protest in Germany, cutting your hair, which I understand you hadn't cut for many years, and unafraid, I suppose, to really make a stand. Tell me, just because you just mentioned it, what was it about the death of Sarina that so affected you?
Well, Sarina could be my daughter. I'm not that old, but if I was like a mother in my very young ages, I could have a daughter as old as her. And Sarina was exactly the girl that I wish I had. She was intelligent, she was active, she was happy, she was wise, and that's probably a lot of mothers wish. And the more I watched her videos, the more I felt, oh my God, she was a dream.
Yeah.
She was something different that we lost her, and that really touched me. And I really struggled to get back on my feet because I needed to be in front of cameras like every day. And we cannot do this to people. We cannot just be crying. We cannot be mourning. We cannot be all the time, It's okay. We're human too, but we need to take a more professional feature figure, or at least facade. That's how it is. So people don't get down. So I think it was her personality. Well, not to mention her beauty was also beyond the words. So I think everything about her, the way she talked, the way she was killed, everything about her really touched me.
Forouq, on the question of security and your own security, being there in the middle of Europe, and you might say the same as in Toronto, despite the fact that there's a big community here that is obviously united against the regime. There's also a lot of other kind of people here, including agents of the regime and people who are connected in different ways to Iran. There's your security, but then there's this question of the security of those who are close to us, our families, our people back in Iran, and if you're outspoken, what happens to them? And you've said something interesting in this regard with about putting your family back in Iran in danger by speaking out. Again, something that many of us worry about and are always cautioned about. You said, should I go silent to protect my family in Iran? They are like any other Iranians, so I go on talking. Can you unpack that statement for me? What do you mean by that?
Well, this is always a feeling that that bothers, because the most protected you can do is to go on fighting, to hope that you finally is going to, or eventually is going to get rid of the regime, so everyone gets free, everyone gets what it deserves. So I really don't know if I could protect them better if I just stopped what I'm doing right now. I think you cannot just pick someone, just okay, because she's my sister, I'm going to protect her, and so I'm not fighting. So what about those 22,000 people who are in prison? To be honest, most of the time I hear something like, statements, comments that I really don't like why would you do this? Who told you to do this? And so on. My answer is always something like the same. I would say, I'm not doing this for you. There are more than 22,000 people who we even don't know most of their names. In prison, we have been just in the recent uprising, we had more than 500 people dead. We have more than 500 people losing both or just one of their eyes. I'm fighting for them. I'm not fighting just for a random person who would survive anyway, if Islamic regime is ruling or not. There are so many people who deserve to be supported, to be fought for. So I'm doing this for them. So yeah, it's important for me to protect my family, but what can I do more than that? If this is something going on to happen, I mean, I'm not saying that they're 100% agreeing with what I'm doing. If so, they would be fighting too in the way that I am.
Yeah.
But it's their responsibility. We're two different, we're people, we're different people, and they should take responsibility for what they do. And I take my responsibilities.
I mean, this isn't just a debate that happens with those of us in the diaspora versus those who are closer to the front lines inside Iran. It happens even inside families in Iran. I think I've mentioned it on the show before, but in my family back in Iran, there was a debate between, say, one of my younger cousins who wanted to go out on the streets and demonstrate, and the older cousins or parents saying, no, you shouldn't do that because it's dangerous. And so, and this created quite a debate in the family, because it's like, well, if the young person wants to go and do that, why are you going to stop them? But on the other hand, obviously, we're all sympathetic to the idea that you don't want your younger daughter to go and be put in danger. It's a difficult debate that I suspect a lot of Iranians inside Iran have been grappling with, maybe people who are listening to us right now. And it's probably at the root of why some of the demonstrations have not been as populated more recently, because of that fear, and because of the older generations or the family or the parents saying, no, we're not going to let you go out there. It's just too dangerous.
That's true. However, considering the chemical poisoning that recently happened in the schools, I really was wondering if this is happening to our children now, while they are exactly at the safest place, or the supposed to be safest place that they should have been. What else could stop us right now?
Right.
I mean, what is stopping us? They're just, okay, if you're not fighting, you're coming now to our children.
Right.
In the school. So
you don't have to be in the street demonstrating to be attacked by chemicals. You can just be a schoolgirl in a school. I'm glad you actually brought that up, because I mean, I can't really think of anything that's been more shocking and horrendous from this regime. And there's quite a list, but how did you process that episode that we've been hearing about in recent weeks, the deliberate chemical attacks on schoolgirls?
Well, honestly, first of all, I need to mention that that's the nature of a dictatorship. You being silent against it doesn't protect you. It just makes you the next victim. That's a problem. So the sooner we get loud, the chances of rescuing ourselves from the coming dangers is higher. So I think there are a couple of theories why the Islamic regime did this to the children. And first of all, I should say that, like many other people, we're almost sure that if the Islamic regime is not just doing this like directly to the children, they are behind this. And there are several scenarios. Possibly they want just to, give people a bit, fear about the probably like coming or any possible uprising, or since the economical situation is getting crazy, they wanted somehow just to distract people, because it became really like a bubble who was about to explode, especially when the currency exchange rate has got so highly high, so they just couldn't control it. And the most important, in my opinion, is that these schoolgirls were kind of one of our most, bravest warriors in this war. Actually, the uprising, the schoolgirls, they were just like way too brave for being just teenagers. They're like, they're even not 18s, and most of them were just like really fighting. We just mentioned the name of Sarina; she was only 16. So I think that was a revenge too, if not the punishment, at least a revenge. So I think it was a couple of scenarios that you could consider when it comes to the I would say the tragic crime of just poisoning schoolgirls and teenagers in the schools.
Forouq, you know how hard it is working with and within the Iranian community, given that there is a tendency to pick apart everyone and everything, and we're seeing that on some levels with some of the reactions to some of the opposition leaders and ideas that are coming up. I'm going to ask you in a moment about the Massa Charter and and some of the other things that are in the air right now. But if I would ask you a general question, I mean, and probably an impossible one to answer, so forgive me, but how do we change the dysfunction in our community and engage in solidarity, especially in the coming months, to try and come together against this situation in Iran?
So far, I've understood the worst mistake that we can do as political activists is to try to convince people to participate, to come along and to be active. We should do our part. I mean, that's the most important thing. We should go on. We should go on. And if people just say that we're going on and we're doing really our contribution, they will join us. They will trust us. People understand. I mean, better than anything. And if we start fighting and just picking on each other, oh, you did this, you that, you do that, and just go on this, I would call it catfight, people would also see this and totally will lose trust on us as well as hope. They don't follow someone who just forgets who's the big enemy and starts picking on the other so-called warriors in this war. I mean, I know we may not like all the techniques and strategies that we are using to find the same enemy, but that's us. That's human being. We don't think same. We don't feel same, and we just don't follow each other in the same way. I personally have like friends who we literally call ourselves like colleagues. In a way, we think against the Islamic regime, but we totally disagree on the way we are actually approaching our goals. So that's totally fine. I don't say that politics is a field to trust everyone. Well, then it wouldn't be called politics, but at least we need to have a level of intelligence to understand I do my part and people will see it. And when I succeed, they will join me and they will go on. So I think the smart politicians, or better to say athletes in this level, political activists, should go on, doesn't look around, just go further, listen to all the arguments, but eventually he or she is one who should take the right decisions.
Okay. I mean, I there's nothing you've said that I would disagree with, but I still think that, even if somebody emerges that, whether it's say Reza Pahlavi or Masih Nejad or somebody who becomes the focal point of the voice of those outside of Iran, you've got all this, in social media at least, you're going to have a cohort of people going, I will not join with this person, and that this person is a communist, or this person is a separatist, or this person, I don't agree with monarchy or whatever. And I know that we have to work some of that out of our system. We can't just leave that for after the regime is toppled. But I do worry about some of the balkanization of our community, because the attacks on each other are so vociferous sometimes based on who we support or who we believe should be the person who is taking the foreground, should be in the person leading things. I don't know how we solve that. I don't know what the answer to it is. I wonder if you have any wisdom around that.
Well, there is certainly no like one answer to this, but I think, well, it's a matter of democracy. We have been suffering from the lack of democracy for so many years. We probably even forgot how to practice it now. And it's maybe the time to eventually come to this idea that the way towards democracy goes through the negotiation, argument, talking. We need to talk to each other. We need to be open. We need to support, if not fully trust. And we need to be wise. We need to watch. We need to get our lessons, and we need to pass. So I personally, I mean, if I talk to someone and I see that the argument, the discussion goes on in a wise way, so perfect. It's even if we don't 100%, we don't succeed to just became at the same page. But at the end of the day, we have our goals achieved. We talked about something.
Okay.
We made it clear, and we have audience who can decide to stand on which side. And that's the point. Most of the time, you cannot convince people because, like, someone in the case that you just mentioned, like as an example, someone has like a history of family fighting against like Shah's governmental system back to the days, and got, I don't know, 2 months of prison or 2 years of prison. He or she hates Shah. It doesn't matter how much I argue about it,
Yeah.
or vice versa. This is like sometimes so personal.
So on this note, tell me, I mean, this Mansour, this Massa Charter, I guess it's an attempt, you could say, to try and bring people together, to try and put something on paper that it can be a rallying point. I've expressed some of my reservations about it, and my hopes that it'll be built upon at least, or that there'll be some correctives. But tell me about, I know you have some concerns because I've seen you talking about it on TV. Tell me about your concerns about the Massa Charter.
Well, before I go
guess,
to the concerns, I would say it has also positive points. It's the first time, well, or almost one of the most biggest steps towards unity. We have something written on hand, even though that's not something that we imagined. My concerns is like many others. People talked about, okay, we wanted to be called as the nation of Iran. In this charter, it's not said. Many people had problem with the logo. They believe that it has like tendencies to left or right or some other stuff, and that it's way too much repeated. Many criticize the charter because apparently it doesn't represent everyone, especially those who are in favor of monarchies in Iran, and it's like a lot of points which actually are true, and you cannot really see this with this lenses. But what I really think is, okay, you don't agree on it, talk about it, but pass. Don't put so much weight on it. And especially the most important thing, we don't have much time in this fight against the Islamic regime. Islamic regime is expanding its international politics, alliances again, and I'm afraid before we even understand, he's gonna, I believe, surprise us with some so-called bad news again. Just imagine Iran is now, well, Islamic regime in Iran is now pretty much close, or at least is bluffing about it, to nuclear power. And do you know what it means? If it comes up in a couple of months, we are done. We just don't have anything anymore to fight for.
Yeah.
It's over.
Can I ask you a personal question? I think you are a supporter of Reza Pahlavi, yes?
Well, that's a tough question to answer.
Yeah, you don't have to answer if it's too difficult, but I was just curious whether you thought he should have signed on to that Mansour.
Well, I told you I'm a supporter of who, but if you mean a political future, I think Reza Pahlavi is the cleanest person in the political arena in Iran. He doesn't have any connection to Islamic Republic. I mean, how could it be possible? And even doesn't have any connection to his father's regime. I mean, if you just read his books, he is enough critical against Mohammad Reza Shah's policies, and he got his lesson very carefully. He know what would come. I mean, he's the one who experienced everything that a regime or a governor shouldn't. So he knows the best what could come after that if he's not the one who he should be. For me, he is trustable. I just could give you lectures why, and I'm sure a lot of people who could prove me maybe wrong. Well, if I'm going to accept or not, that's another story. But I just think that Reza Pahlavi is national capital, really. And he knows it, and he has a big heart for Iran. And this is something that we never should forget. We have been in a country, especially after the Islamic Republic, that no one, because of the regime, I have to just emphasize, no one cared about the country. And I hate it. Just this called this subculture of let it go. I mean, if someone is still living in Iran, maybe understand what I'm saying. Velesh kon. Let it go. It's like, ugh, never mind. Why would you care? It's not your house. Just let it go.
Mm.
And that made disasters like Metropole in Khuzestan, and a lot of other disasters when you just out of sudden cannot trust anyone and anything anymore.
Mm.
You don't know if the engineer is doing his job correctly or the doctor is doing their job correctly or. And that's the point that we need to have someone who just can give us this national pride, this patriotism, and this love for the soil. That's so important to know that we need someone who has it and who can actually gives us back this feeling. I think he could be the guy, really.
There has been a lot of concern that somehow the movement, especially inside Iran, and undoubtedly due to the brutality of the crackdown on those who were protesting, that the movement has somehow died down, that the revolution is not happening, that there aren't as many people in the streets. What did you think of the new protests that occurred over the last few days in Iran? Did they inspire you or give you hope that things are still continuing in an important way?
Well, I never lost my hope because of the streets being empty of protesters. I may lose my hope, as I just mentioned, when Islamic Republic's international politics goes differently. That's another story. But well, the tempo of our protests or uprising were way too high. It was going so fast. It was so swift that at the very beginning of the revolution, or well, uprising at least, it's going to be a revolution. I hope so. I was always wondering, hey guys, I was always telling my like people around me at least, it can't go on like this. Just don't get your hopes so high, and just expect this as it must be. It's just too fast. Everything was going so fast, and I remember even I mentioned it several times in my interviews. This is so fast. Don't get your hopes so high, because when it comes down, which it might, and we see that it already did, then you lose your hopes. You are
Right.
not allowed to.
Right.
It has to be like this. Up down, up down is totally normal. I think it's now something started that can't be stopped, especially because of the activities of the Iranian diaspora. So I still have my hopes.
I'm so grateful for the time you've given us. I'm sorry I've kept you so long. Let me ask you one more question. You just keep saying interesting things that I want to pick up on. And as a final question, maybe I will pick up on one of the interesting things you said. And that is a few moments ago, I thought this was very, very interesting. You said the biggest political mistake we make, if I can paraphrase you, is to try and drag people along to this if they don't want to be, to be part of the uprising, to be part of the revolution. And certainly I agree that we shouldn't be shaming people if they're not, spending all their time on Instagram amplifying the revolution voices or whatever. And there was some of that happened in the first few months, and I don't think it was helpful. But on the other hand, there have been people from the beginning saying, look, this is going to take a collective effort and everybody needs to be on board, and there's kids dying. And so with that said, and with what you talked about, what do you believe are the important next steps? If you could snap your fingers and get what you want for those of us in the diaspora in terms of helping this movement, what do you believe the next important steps would be?
Safety of the protesters. It's a women life freedom uprising revolution. It is about life. We don't need martyrs anymore. Or well, not. Some people are already just in this way, like people like me. We don't care what happens. I feel like I already lost everything. I have my country behind me. What else can I lose? And that means like everything, my family, the love of my life, everything is lost. So I don't I don't mind anymore if I lose more, even if my life. But the safety of those who are protesting is the most important thing. That's why I think the role of the diaspora is very important. We need to achieve what we demanded from the day one. Putting IRGC especially in the terror list will help us to cut the economical and, well, the financial aid given to the Islamic regime, which means that the suppressive forces are going to be cut from their wages. And that's the good news for us, because if they're not paid, they could not like kill further. And that's the moment that eventually the core gonna collapse. The lack of money, the lack of support, and that's the moment that everyone will join.
It's such a good reminder. It's such a good reminder because yes, A, that's something we've been saying since the beginning, and there's a reason for it, and B, because it really doesn't have to do with whether things are happening inside Iran on the streets or not. That is something that's on the diaspora. It's on us. We are responsible for the predictable outcome of the actions of our governments, the government of Canada, the government of Germany, or whatever, where we're living. And we are the ones who have to pressure them into putting the IRGC on the terrorist list. And that is something that the diaspora can do, regardless of whether we think that there's wind in the sails of the movement inside Iran or not, from day to day. It's a great reminder. Thank you for that.
You're very welcome.
And thank you for taking the time, for all the passion with which what you do. I don't know how you're how much time you're getting to finish your PhD while you're doing all your media appearances and your activism. But
my second wish, Jian, my first wish is actually or better to say, goal is to get rid of the Islamic regime, and the second is to finally finish my studies. It has been a long
right to get that over. Yeah, it's probably
really a couple of months. It's
no easy task.
I'm so close now.
Thank you for this, and I hope we do it again soon. And stay safe and stay strong in Germany.
Thank you so much. Thank you, and I just hope that we eventually will meet in Iran.
That's the dream. Merci. Khuda Hafiz. Forouq Canaani in Frankfurt. This is Full Time for Roqe for today. Thank you so much for listening along. Remember, our website is roqemedia.com, where you can link to ways to support us. Thanks to the amazing team who put this show together. Savvy Roam, talented Anahita, Super Parisa, Smart Pegah, Mertod. Thank you to all of you out there supporting us and sharing our content. Please subscribe if you haven't done so already. You can find me on Instagram at Jian Ghomeshi. Back on Monday. In the meantime, as ever, Mizun Bashin.